Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Woolen Spinning. It is Tuesday, February 20th. Where is February going? 2024. Welcome, welcome. I'm feeling a little bit low energy right now at this time of year. It's really interesting. Over the last couple of weeks, I had quite a few shifts that I put into the calendar to try to get ahead of some stuff coming up in March. And the kids are only in school 2 days in March. To say that we are having a challenging school year is an understatement. I did schoolwork with James on Sunday for about 6 hours and then yesterday for about an hour and a half, but he got everything done. And that was the same the weekend before. We had a long weekend here in British Columbia and Alberta too. I think it was most of the country actually has moved now so that we all have our family day long weekend. It's sort of an extra stat that they introduced because the time from New Year's through to spring break at the end of March is so long and there's no break. So they put in an extra stat quite a few years ago now. It's been a while now. Anyways, for a while they put BC and Alberta on 2 different weekends because they didn't want to overwhelm the ski hills. But it just caused so much confusion and so much difficulty that they eventually moved us to the same weekend. So I think now BC lines up with the rest of the country, but I might be just blowing smoke, so I have no idea. But I'm pretty sure because my in-laws, they had a long weekend when we talked to them yesterday. Anyhow, so he was doing schoolwork all weekend and yeah, we're all just kind of low energy. Nora came down with a really terrible cold, and as she was homesick from school last Monday, a week ago, and she just kind of didn't rally as the week went on, and she eventually sort of, got her butt going sort of later in the week, but she missed all of her soccer. And then James came down with it, and me and Mike have just had it like sort of a slow brew in the background where we're just we both know that we've got a little bit of something. So just kind of trying to be really kind to ourselves, just take it easy in terms of not putting too much on our calendar and too much on our plate, taking off whatever we can, and just trying to sort of, be really gentle to ourselves and really kind, which is difficult to do. Mike's got a lot going on at work. I've got a lot going on. But we've so far been sort of able to at least have some really quiet weekend evenings and just, sort of be gentle to ourselves. I don't know how else to say that. Anyhow, everybody, it's so good to see everybody. I was wondering, chat was like super, super quiet until right at 10 a.m. Pacific. And I was like, oh no, are the links wrong? So I rapidly checked to make sure everything was working. But no, everybody's here. It's so good to see you all. Thank you so much for being here. See you all. Yay for quiet weekend, says Rebecca. Absolutely. What I'm wearing today. So this is one of my most worn hand knits that I have ever made, and I still wear it all the time. I'm still kind of shocked at how much I wear it. It's A Day by Cyrilla Rose, and I don't actually think she's designing anymore. I'm pretty sure she has kind of moved on to other things, but that's my project page. I knit this in Cascade Eco Plus, so the Eco Plus yarn, and it's an all over cable and knit pattern. I knit it in color blue, which was number 9332. I did modify the gauge quite a bit because the pattern actually calls for chunkier yarn, but at that time so many people were modifying it and using Cascade Eco and Cascade Ecological that I kind of just followed other people's project notes on Ravelry and used what they used. I only used 1.5 skeins, and you'll see later in the show as I'm getting up and moving around how long it is. I knit it to length of the pattern. It was quite a fast knit now looking back. I think at the time I felt like it was a slow knit, and I did knit the 36 inch, but it's funny, even now, and I'm a slightly different size from when I knit this before, and I meant to look to see when I had knit this, because we lived in this house when I finished this, 2011, so we had just bought this house in October of 2010. We moved in January of 2011, and this was one of my last yarn purchases before a local yarn shop that I used to go to all the time in Vancouver closed, and I got the yarn from them. And I don't actually know what happened to that shop, but it is closed. anyhow, in a very blue mood today. I've got a blue t-shirt on that Nora said I had to wear because it was so pretty. It's an old Navy t-shirt from, I bought it before we had kids, so maybe 2007, 2008 I must have bought this. And yeah, and then I'm wearing blue jeans, so I'm just very blue today. It's just where I'm at. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the community, because we have a lot going on. So our year of color is sort of, sorry, our year of color was last year. Our year of yarn is this year. And let me just get to my slides here so that I can tell you all about what we're working on. February of 2024, so this month, we, Rebecca and I sort of recorded for Woolen Spinning Radio the second half of our conversation from January. So it's sort of a continuation of welcoming 2024. I hope you enjoyed listening to that. And then, as many of you know, but anybody who's new to the community, we're doing a 2-year deep dive into Sarah Anderson's book, The Spinner's Book of Yarn Design. So places to engage are Spinning Pearls, which I'll talk about in a minute, the Wool Circle, which I'll also talk about in a minute, and Spinning Staples, which is the specific group that's dedicated to sort of a book study type approach that Rebecca is running. Queries and Explorations is meeting this coming Saturday. We meet twice per month on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific. I always want to say 8, but it's at 9 a.m. Pacific. And we're actually, as a group, we decided to do sort of a deep dive for a few sessions. This will be our second session on joins. So joining different types of fiber. So I had actually a little bit of fun going through a whole bunch of my bins, finding a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to chat with them about. And we've been looking at our first session, we looked mostly at wool, and we want to talk about joins both on the wheel and on the spindles. So this coming week, we'll talk about joining silk and alpaca and cotton and a bunch of other stuff, and then we'll look at spindles probably in the session afterward, because we tend to run out of time because there's just so much to talk about. So that's a rundown on Queries and Explorations. You can find all of this stuff and the information about all the tiers and everything you can find on Patreon. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me, Rachel at wellforpearls.com. So Year of Yarn, Rebecca is on Spinning Pearls. Those are released throughout the month. There's sort of averaged out thus far to be one every Sunday, but I think they'll sort of, as the year goes on, they'll slim out to sort of maybe 2 or 3 per month. But they're sort of pearls of wisdom, looking back through the archives, bringing stuff forward, giving you guys an opportunity to see some of the stuff that was released over the years, because there has been so much over the years, like so much, that you know, it's really nice for me to be able to sort of go back through the archives, and for those who are new here, to be able to sort of look at some of that stuff that maybe you would otherwise miss, because it's just so overwhelming to go back through the archives. I was having a conversation with somebody on Patreon last week. Actually, we exchanged a couple of messages just about just the sheer overwhelm of trying to find stuff, and I was sort of directing her to a few different places that might help to look. So on the landing page of Patreon, and let me know in chat if this would be helpful, there is a when you land on Patreon, so you're signed in, you're on the Woolen Spinning landing page, there's tabs in the middle, and one of those tabs is called Collections. If you click on that, there's a whole bunch of collections that populate that will take you to specific content, and you can go through all of the vlogs and PDFs that were associated with that particular study. So there's one for Year of Color, there's one for 51 Yarns, which we did a few years ago, and I'm happy to do a video of showing you guys sort of how to navigate some of this stuff and where to click and where to go. Just let me know in the comments if that would be helpful. Part of the reason why everything links back to a Patreon post and not to a YouTube URL is because a lot of this stuff is behind a paywall. And so it's a way to protect my work and to protect access to my work. So I hope that helps to kind of clarify some of that stuff, because I know there's been lots of really good questions and lots of really good conversation. So I really appreciate that you guys are reaching out to me and are asking. So thank you so much. The Wool Circle streams every other Tuesday, so when there's the live stream, it's the live stream week, and then the Wool Circle is the opposite weeks. Next Tuesday, Rebecca's continuing with her deep dive into the drafts. So we looked at true worsted, now we're going to be looking at true woolen next week. I have that right, Rebecca? I've been editing all the episodes, and I'm getting confused as to which is next. But I think that's right. Next week is true woolen. And Spinning Staples meets on the 2nd and the 4th Wednesday of every month at 12 noon Pacific. And that's the group that's dedicated to the deep dive. So I hope that helps. Now, as part of the community, when you join the Slack channel, are all of these Zoom groups that have been kind of these like grassroots groups that have come up through the community that have been spearheaded by the community for the community. So when you see a Zoom link in the Slack channel, for those who are part of the Slack channel, when you see that Zoom link, if you see a Zoom link, you are welcome and invited to click on that. So I think that's caused a little bit of confusion because queries and explorations and Spinning Staples, those are behind paywalls with Rebecca and I, but these groups are for everyone who's part of Slack. So if you pay $5 a month to be a part of the Slack channel, you can be a part of these groups. So there's a spin group every Tuesday. You guys met this morning. I hope you had a great time. I'm sorry I couldn't jump in. It's just been kind of a crazy morning. There was a very interesting #aggressive email that came from Nora's teacher yesterday, and it was directed at one parent in particular. It was just, I can't believe she sent it. Anyhow, the mom that knows that it was the email was sent because of her, she's taking it really, really well, and she's really kind of quite calm about it, and I think it's because she knows she didn't do anything wrong. But the moms were kind of talking about it, and I didn't want to be a part of the gossip channel and the gossip group and stuff, so I wanted to go up and say hello, but I didn't want to like participate, so I just went up and I said hello, but then it was really hard to extricate myself, so finally I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna walk away. So after a minute or two, I was like, hey guys, bye. And I just walked away. Like, what else do you do, right? If you don't want to really be a part of it. And then there was a really, really interesting thing on the radio. When I got into the car, there was a really interesting show that they were doing on The Current this morning. I'm going to go back and finish listening to it later. But it was about retirement in Canada and how unattainable it is for so many people. No, it was just really interesting. So I'm sorry I didn't see you guys this morning. Spin group is on Thursdays at 8 a.m. Please note, it is GMT, London time, not Pacific. And then fiber prep and weaving group, they alternate every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific. Doesn't matter if you're not a weaver yet. Doesn't matter if you're not doing any fiber prep. Just join, jump in, get to know everybody. And then the books channel, Becca's working on it. She's here in the chat today. We're working on sort of picking another book. She's got some options listed in the Slack channel and asking people to vote on them. So if that appeals to you, if you're a reader and you like to read, especially if you spin while you listen to audiobooks, jump into #books and join our book club. I am currently reading a very just fun book. It's called The Chemistry of Love by Soraya Wilson. This is the first book I've read by her. It's super light. It's just really, really fun. It's a romance, because if you know me, romance. When I'm not reading, I like to read sort of a heavier, more what I would sort of consider quote unquote literature, and then I sort of swap them back and forth. So for something lighter, and then I go back to something a little bit heavier, and back and forth. So Demon Copperhead, we finished that. I really enjoyed it. And then I picked this up afterwards, and I'm really enjoying this as well. I have quite an eclectic taste in books. I tend to sort of read what calls to me. Yeah, Christine says we had an annoyingly passive-aggressive note written by our staff board at work, which I know was aimed at me. Oh, yeah, you just have to take a photo and document, right, Christine? One of the moms had a meeting with the principal today, and she was going to bring it forward and be like, just so you know, this was sent out to all the parents last night at 10 p.m. Crazy, crazy. Rebecca says, so Becca, who runs a book club, she says the poll is pretty clear, so she's going to lay out a schedule later today. For those who are in book club, have a look out for that. I'm sorry that I'm going to be coughing a little bit. I've got lots of water here for me. To be honest, I've been just had this dry cough. It's all part of this this cold that's been kind of brewing for us in the background. So I promised that I would give a little tiny plug for my friend Kim McKenna. I've known Kim for a very long time, and she's a beautiful spinner. For those who aren't familiar with her work, her courses are available on the School of Sweet Georgia, but I wanted to give, and there is an affiliate link down below for if you would like to join the School of Sweet Georgia. But she has a Spin a Hand-Dyed Braid 5 Ways workshop coming out pretty soon. It's releasing on February 22nd, so 2 days from now. The yarns that she's made for this are beautiful, and I wanted to link the course for you if this is something that interests you. We've done a lot of this type of spinning in our community, and we've covered a lot of these techniques that she's going to be covering. However, it's fun to have a different perspective, hear from a different voice. I think it's really important in our learning journey, whatever we're learning, that we hear from more than just one voice. We all teach things slightly differently. We have different approaches. We have different ways of doing things. And I think it's really great to hear from a diverse number of voices. She also has 2 new tutorials that Sweet Georgia just released that are free to watch. One is prepping for a fractal spin, and the other one is dizzing off of her hand cards to create to open up the comb top and to open up your fiber off of hand cards. So if you have a whole bunch of fiber, that especially stuff, what I've found is this technique has been really helpful for is when you've got stuff that's really compacted and it's been in your stash for a really long time, if you put it onto a hand card and diz it off, so you're not carding, you're just using the hand card to hold the fiber, and then you're dizzing it off and moving it down as you go. Like I said, we'll talk about this later in the show. It's a wonderful technique to use. And yeah, Lisa says Kim is a very careful and methodical maker and a very good teacher. Absolutely. I always learn from her as well. She's one of those people in my life that has been a very strong spinning mentor for me, and I really appreciate what she's offered to the wider hand spinning community. She's had lots of articles in Spin Off over the years, a couple in Ply magazine. I always learn from her, and I appreciate how thoughtful she is about her making. All right. Well, without further ado, why don't we get into the show? I have my Attune shawl to show you quickly. I have a finished spin, another spin that I started. I've got a lot to show you, so let's do it. A thank you to our sponsor, Brother Drum Carder. They are dedicated to giving you the very best of carding products with a focus on quality, affordability, and customer satisfaction. They are beginning to build mill processing equipment, so please stay tuned. Be sure to check out the new products on their website and follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Brother Drum Carder. I was reading some of the comments in chat and I'm tired. I haven't been sleeping really super well, and just fighting this cold and stuff, all the typical things. Lisa says she's had a stupid dry cough for about 3 weeks, and mine's going on for about a week now, and I feel you, Lisa. It's annoying, right? But anyways, I was reading chat and I saw Eve, your comment about having the terrorists is a good excuse to leave. I totally read that wrong. So Eve has terriers, dogs, and like Jack Russells, and I'm reading what she wrote and I'm like, the terrorists, like what? Because I was reading it as like terrorists, not the terriers. Anyways, oh my goodness. Jessie says my brother's favorite to get out of things was I gotta go take a bath. I love that. How awkward would that be? I have to go take a bath. Everybody just looks at you. All right. I had an Ask Anything that I was wanting to share with you guys, and I'm actually wondering if I queued everything up for you guys, and I did. So this was a question that you guys get to just look at some lovely yarn while we chat. This was a question that came into the Ravelry group on the Ask Anything thread, and this is from Allison. So she says, I did a really stupid thing. It's not a stupid thing. We've all done it, Allison, don't worry. I literally plied a Z twist single with an S twist single to make a really crazy unusable 2-ply yarn. Don't even ask how I managed this. Honestly, I think we've all done that at certain times when we think our wheels are going one way, and then we sit down to start spinning and we actually accidentally start spinning the other way, especially when you're not like paying attention or you're just sort of on autopilot. It happens, trust me. I am making myself do the control card and note on my bobbins S or Z twist with a wet erase marker to avoid this insanity again. That's a great idea. But is there any way I can salvage this yarn? Can I put it on a skein winder and separate the singles? So Allison got quite a few responses after I had written my responses so that I could talk about it on the show. But one of the things that this immediately made me think of was, and this photo is just so perfect that it would play through right this second, you've made an opposing ply yarn. So what you've done is the one single was plied sort of what we would call normally, where it's, you know, spun in one direction and plied in the opposite direction for balance. But the singles that was plied in the direction that you spun it in, so the S spun single plied S, has basically been up twisted. You've added a whole bunch more twist to it. And that's a lot of what gives these opposing ply yarns that instability where it looks, or sorry, not the instability. It gives them that unbelievable amount of twist when you pull them off the skein winder and they just kind of go zing, zing, zing. And you sort of think like, oh my goodness, how in the tarnation am I going to use this yarn? 3-ply opposing twist yarn is where 2 of the singles are spun in the Z direction and 1 single is spun in the S direction, and then it's all, the whole yarn is then plied S. So you've got 2 singles that are plied to balance and 1 single that is basically up plied. This yarn is in Sarah Anderson's book of yarn design. So as the year goes on and as we continue to do these deep dives, some of these yarns we will be coming back to and we will be exploring in more detail. And we've explored this particular yarn in quite a lot of detail in the past when we did sock yarn. The cool thing about them is while in the skein they seem really unmanageable, and I think your word was unusable, I totally get why you would feel that way. I would really encourage you to wash it and then to knit with it and see what the fabric is like coming out of it, because if nothing else, this is an awesome learning opportunity to see how these yarns act and what happens to them once they're washed and made into fabric. And if you look really closely at this slide here, and I'm just going to pause the slide for just a minute. If you look at this slide to here, if you look at the 3 singles that are in the yarn, just look at one of the particular strands here under this sort of macro view, you can see that the 3rd single is quite a bit more twisted and quite a bit more tight. It looks tighter. It almost gives it an ever so slightly bubbled appearance on the surface of the yarn. You can see that down below, especially where there's higher contrast, where there's that singles right below me, where there's the purple with the 2 white or the red one with the 2 white. You can see how one of those white singles is really, really tight. And what ends up happening, and you can see what happens once it's washed. And then what happens in the knitted fabric is you get this sort of almost kind of feel and look to the fabric that it feels very much like commercial fabric, like a commercial sock yarn type fabric. And this isn't just for socks, this happened to be the example at that time when we explored this yarn. But when you feel the fabric, I remember me and Felicia Lowe from Sweet Georgia, standing in her kitchen, and we were kind of reflecting on the fabric, and it really feels like commercial sock fabric. It really feels like sock fabric that you would feel like on your feet. And I think, and Felicia and I also talked to Kim McKenna about it at the time, which is kind of funny that we were just talking about Kim's course. It's almost like that 3rd singles almost ends up acting as like nylon does in a lot of our commercial socks. in the socks that we buy at the store, where that slightly tighter, almost kind of wiry feel comes through. And what ends up happening is it gives the socks themselves this really, really nice feel that's a bit elastic. These socks really shaped to my feet really super well. They didn't stretch out. They really kept their shape. They went back into shape really nicely if they after I wore them for a few days, and then I would wash them and they would go back to because you know how hand spun, hand knit socks they do, or hand knit socks in general, I find they do stretch a little bit, and especially if I don't knit them tightly enough. This fabric really stood up to that wear and tear, and it's almost like that tighter spun singles acted like nylon in the fabric. The other piece of this, however, though, and this was something that Kim and I were reflecting on, you know, when you wear socks for a really super long time, your commercial socks, and eventually the cotton, if you wear like a cotton nylon sock, for example, I'm just using that as an example, the cotton wears away over time and you're left with the fabric that's only has nylon in it. Kim and I wondered if over time that's what would happen with these. Unfortunately, these socks succumbed to moths, and so I lost them after 3 or 4 years of wearing them, and they still looked brand new at the time, but the pantry moths that I've been dealing with and slowly making sure that they don't have a place in the house to live and to breed. These were one of the first pair of socks that I found that had been damaged by them. So unfortunately, I don't know whether or not that would have happened over time, and whether or not that opposing ply would have worn away at the other two singles over time. I don't know. I suspect that it would have. I just have a sneaking suspicion. But I would really encourage you, Allison, to sort of go back and to see sort of, what that fabric is like swatched up. I know it's only a 2-ply, so it'll act a little bit differently, but if you knit at an appropriate gauge for the yarn that you spun, you might be really surprised at what the fabric is like, and how well it washes and kind of evens out, and how much of that twist actually really does dissipate in the water and comes out like this. And then knit with it and see. You can untwist the singles, and you can have two. What I've done in the past is I've set up 2 ball winders, and I put the skein on my umbrella swift, and you can first you unply the yarn, so you put it back through the wheel going in the Z direction and try to take out as much twist as you can, and then skein it up. And then from the skein winder or your umbrella twist, whatever works best for you, have the 2 singles going onto your 2 ball winders separately. It really helps if somebody helps you, so you can crank at the same time, and you can sort of save those singles. And then I would just ply them back on themselves. Figure out which one's S twist, figure out which one's Z twist, and then ply one S and ply one Z. So you can do that. So yeah. That article, I'm just catching up on chat. So that article that you guys are talking about, we talked about that article by, what's her name? I think she's based in Holland. Pia? No. I wrote about that a lot. There was the article with the belt sander. It was in Ply magazine, and it was in the sock issue. And that particular issue about the opposing ply, that's why, Kim and I don't actually think long-term these socks would have probably worn that well. Because yes, Rebecca says, if I remember correctly, the Ply magazine issue on opposing ply sock yarns didn't do very well on the wear test. And yes, exactly. Pimmy, thank you so much, Eve. Pimmy. Her article with the belt sander, go back and look at the article from Ply magazine that was on, it was called like the sock issue. And they talked about, and she did all of these, experiments with the belt sander, and the opposing ply did not do that well. So super interesting. All right, so let's move along, because otherwise, like last time, the show will get to be hours and hours long, and we won't be able to do community participation. Thank you, Becca. She said it's the winter 2018 ply issue. So you're looking for winter 2018, which makes sense because we were doing socks from 2000 and when was our sock stuff? 2018 to 2019. I think it was like right around the same time that we were doing sock stuff as well. So I forgot to queue up a whole bunch of photos that I took of my finished yarn. So just give me 1 second here. This is going to mess up the screen for just a sec, but if you can just hold on 1 minute while I fix all of this. All right, so this was yarn. This yarn I finished, you know what, we should probably run for ease of just people finding stuff and all of the time tags and stuff. I'm going to run our intro credits for spinning, and then we will chat about this spin afterwards. So give me 1 sec. Did I, Rebecca? That's crazy. We did the sock book, yeah, because I took all of those PDFs and everything that I had written for that content 2018 and 2019, and I put it into a book. And yeah, that was 2000 and yeah, so we must have finished up at the end of 2019, and then we must have done 51 yarns 2020 to 2021. And then 2022, we did a whole bunch of luxury fiber stuff. It's all becoming a bit of a blur, you guys. Holy smokes. So one of the big things that I've been trying to do this year is really try to stash down. I've been intentionally going through my stash and trying to find things that I want to work on, that I'm excited to spin up and excited to spin and get out of my stash. So I started this spin when we were camping at Thanksgiving. And my original plan was to put it on my spindles and spin it on my spindles. And I just, you know, once we got home and we got into the fall, I just didn't get a lot of spinning time just in general. And when that happens, and when those stages of life kind of happen, that also means I don't get a lot of spindle spinning time either. So I just don't get any time to do any of the things. So this braid had been in my stash for quite a long time. And it was actually featured on the cover of Spin-Off, I think it was, Spin-Off magazine. I don't know why I don't have the braid itself. I wanted to show you guys the braid itself. So let's do that. Let me just throw that into the mix of photos. This is the original braid. So I'm not sure. So that was the original braid. And we talked about this a little while ago on the show. And I said about, you know, how I was prepping it for spinning, and I stripped it down. So it's, she labeled it, it's from Woolly Bully. I bought it, like I said, eons ago. I'm not exactly sure when I bought it, but it was on the cover of Spin-Off. And it just ended up being really coincidental that I ended up with the same braid that had been on the cover of Spin-Off. I had bought this separate from that, and then I realized that there was the overlap. Anyhow, I started this on my spindles, but when we were camping, I spent most of the weekend, this was back in October for Canadian Thanksgiving, I spent most of the weekend actually prepping the fiber for spinning, and I never took a photo of it, but what I did was, once I unbraided it and actually had it all open, it was actually pieces of roving. It wasn't like one continuous long braid like you would sort of expect when you unbraid something like this. There was like bits and pieces, and there were pieces that were fully brown, and then the rest of it was sort of the turquoise color that you see. And actually this photo is quite blue, whereas in real life it's actually a little bit greener and a little bit more seafoam. And yeah, I just started spinning it on my spindles, and like I said, I never got to it. So over the last couple of weeks with being home and the kids being not well and just sort of sitting with them and having lots of quiet time with them, I just grabbed all of those bits and pieces that I had prepped and all of those little nests of fiber, and I sort of tried to roughly divide them in half. I did an okay job. I had quite a bit left on this pink bobbin here, and I just finished it off with a center pull ball, and that actually worked quite well. It was just the last little bit. But I got this all spun last weekend. So over the course of Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, last weekend, like a week and a bit ago, I actually had it completely spun. And then I kind of went down this rabbit hole of thinking that I would take, I don't have any Columbia fiber. This is Columbia, by the way. I don't have any Columbia in my stash, but I thought, well, I could spin another whole bobbin of singles, and I could do a marled yarn again, like I did for my capstone, which is behind me, which we'll talk about in a little while. And I could do a marled yarn and have it a 3-ply. And I posted about it on Instagram, and I was kind of thinking about it all week. And then James was sitting here on the weekend doing his schoolwork, and I had a couple of shifts at work, and then I was tired and I was sitting here and I was looking at the bobbins, and I was like, you know what? My original plan was a straightforward 2-ply. I'm just going to ply it and just be done. Because my goal for sort of the rest of the spring, I'm just going to see how it goes over the next few weeks, is to sort of spin a braid every 2 weeks, because I really want to get some of this stuff turned over and get it out of my stash. And I really have missed that role of just sitting and spinning and not necessarily having a big plan, not necessarily having a huge end goal, but just spinning and just sitting and spinning. Everything the last few years, probably since about 2019, everything has felt like there has to be an outcome, like there has to be a goal. It has to be for teaching content or a workshop for School of Sweet Georgia, or or a sweater spin for a specific sweater. Like everything has to be so end oriented. And I think that's part of why I burned out so much over the last few years and kind of lost some of that mojo. And so now I'm going to pull out a braid every sort of roughly 2 weeks, prep it, spin it, pull out another braid, prep it, spin it, and just really enjoy just spinning up this stuff from my stash. Because a lot of this stuff isn't really what I want to work with anymore. A lot of these braids aren't really what I want to do. I really would like to focus more on processing fleece and spinning right from the get-go. Dion and I have been talking about developing some colorways and having, really developing our dyeing over the next few years and working on that together. And that's sort of the direction that I want to go. I've been wanting to go in that direction for a number of years, and now I'm sort of finally at that point where I feel like I can move in that direction. So this is a very bouncy, very springy, very downy feeling medium wool that's a 2-ply. It's roughly about, I think it came out around, under a slight bit of knitting tension, it came out at about 18 wraps per inch. So if I were picking a needle size to get started with, and I wanted to start somewhere in terms of like needle gauge size, and somewhere to start, I would probably start somewhere around like 3mm, 3.5 millimeter, so a US size, like 2.5, 3-ish. And I would start from there. This would actually be really great for my junction. I think there would be a lot of contrast between this and the black. I also think this would look really nice with a charcoal gray instead of that real black. So, and I know that there's enough yardage here for that, but we'll see. Good to see you, Ellen. She's heading off now. So the next spin that I have ready to go is actually Scruff by Bramble Ridge. So this is my friend Megan, and I have started to prep the first bobbin. So this is my next 2-week spin. And I've got, what I decided with this, she named this colorway Scruff because, here I'll show you the back side of this, because it's the scruff of men's beards. So it's all the colors that she associates with the scruff of men's beards. Sorry, there's a glare off of the camera. I can show it down here actually. But very gray, there's some like antique light pinks in there, some yellow. So what I was doing while James was working yesterday was I set up my hand card, grabbed my diz, and I've just been dizzing through the the comb top to create just a really lovely, light, airy top where the colors are really beautifully blended from one to the other. And if you see what it looks like prior to doing that to after, you can see the difference. You can see why it's worth it for me to spend that time to do that. And I've just been randomly stripping the braid very sort of not with a lot of care and attention to like the, you know, how big or the color repeat or anything like that. I stripped the braid into 4 nests initially, to create the 4-ply, and then I've just been, you know, stripping them this first bobbin down like that, and then dizzing it off the hand card. And follow that tutorial that I posted in the chat earlier, so that you can get a sense of what I'm talking about, that Kim that Kim sort of teaches. And that's the difference. Dizzing it off the hand card gives you this light, airy, very just lovely even prep. And if I left it like this and just pre-attenuated, I would get something similar. But I find that this is more even. I find that from start to finish, this is more even. And so I'm finding that it's worth the time and the care and the attention to go about doing that, and to create these, here's another one that I did, and here's another one that I did. So this will eventually be for a 4-ply. So I've got this is the fiber that I have to finish. I have to finish prepping. This is already done. And this has to be done, and that'll be the first bobbin of the 4-ply. And the reason why I chose 4-ply, this is just straightforward, untreated BFL. The reason why I chose a 4-ply is because I haven't done one for a while. It's been a while. I have no plans for the braid. There's nothing that has to be done with it. It's just for fun. It's just to keep on going. Rebecca says, I don't know how you get braid stripped down to 16ths. My fiber starts falling apart if I go that small. So one of the things that I was taught, I don't know if this will help or not, but one of the things that I was taught early on was when you start to strip, and I'll see if I can put this onto the bigger camera, and hopefully you guys will be able to see. Let me move my attune because it's quite bright, and so it provides a lot of busyness in the background. I did some swatching this past week. This is my fin, my Kainu Harma that Amber had sent me, and I had spun all of this last year, and it's about 300 grams ish. It's just shy, I think it's like 272 grams or something of spun yarn, and it's just this unbelievably lightweight, airy you know, yarn that's sort of been sitting in my stash. And I have my eye on this really lightweight summer tee that I actually wore my Poet quite a bit more this past summer than I thought that I would. And this would give me a second lightweight summer knitted tee. It's got short sleeves. I've got more than enough yardage. It's knit on like 3.5 millimeter US size, size 2.5 or 3 millimeter needles, something like that. So I actually was swatching for it this weekend, and it's just created the most divine fabric. And this part of the swatch down here is actually 3.5 millimeter needles, and then this up here, which are US size 3, and then up here is 3.25 millimeter needles, or US size 3. I mark it on my swatch with purl stitches, so I know. So when I have my swatches in front of me, I know the American equivalent of the metric, but when I don't, I don't. I'm getting better though. Have you guys noticed? I'm getting better. But this is actually still on the 3.25. It's a little tiny bit too open and a little tiny bit too, and so I need to swatch again on 3 millimeter needles, or US size 2, and also I think I probably need to do 2.75 millimeters and go down just a little bit further. I don't quite have gauge anyways. I need a slightly tighter gauge anyways, but oh my goodness, this fabric, I just love it. I love it. So this is my pile of swatches right now that I'm working from for all of my projects. I've got so much that I want to do. It's overwhelming. So anyways, when I was taught back when I first was taught about stripping braids and stripping them down and stuff, one of the things that I used to have happen to me all the time was the braid would just fall apart. And one of the things that I have found has really made a huge difference is if you make that initial hole, but then really support the fiber as you pull it apart, Like, don't just rip it, like really support it and keep it together. And I find just holding it like that and holding it together really keeps it from drifting apart, and it keeps it really well organized. And that, it takes longer, but really honestly, that is what allows me to strip it and to keep going, and it doesn't fall apart. And I could strip this again. You just have to really support the fiber and really like make sure that it knows that it is not to separate from its buddies, that they are related, that they are to stay together. So I don't know if that helps somebody watching who's sort of just learning about stripping fiber, but that's how I get it stripped so fine. It takes a long time. It is sort of methodical, quiet work, and I just sit and work on it. Now, because I was going through my stash over this past week and I was finding all this stuff, I found a whole bunch of little bits and pieces. So I found this strip of comb top from West Coast Color from eons ago, and I just had this very little bit left. And so while I was sitting here yesterday with James, helping him with the last of his paper that he had to write, he was writing letters about resource extraction. So as if he was somebody living in a town where there was oil and gas or mining, and what that would be like to live in a town like that. And he was supposed to write letters to somebody back home, or to somebody like a friend or a family member about living in this town, and the environmental destruction, the economy, the future, blah blah blah. It actually ended up being a really interesting project. And it really helped him to see it from multiple viewpoints, that it wasn't all bad and it wasn't all good, and that it's actually just a whole bunch of gray. It was really, really, really interesting. So I took this little bit of fiber while I was sitting here with him because I just love these colors, and I don't know how I ended up with this little bit of this little strip of West Coast Color. Is probably left over from something, or I got it somewhere. So I've been dizzing it off just for something to do, to sit there with him while I was supporting him and sitting with him. So that is ready. That'll be ready to go. I'll diz them as I spin them, rather than sitting and doing them all at once. And I also found a whole bunch of fiber that was in a Ziploc bag that I had for eons, completely forgotten about. All random colors and bits and pieces. They were from a workshop from a while ago. So I took them all and I made 4 bats. I don't know how much they weighed, but I made 4 big bats and I stripped those down. And I passed these through a total of, to make the little batlings at the end, that was the 4th pass. And so they're all purples and greens, which actually this combination of color, even though this is sitting right here, this is actually not my thing. However, Nora saw it and she really liked it. So if I make her some yarn, she might actually make something. So I've got a big bag of those all ready to go. So fingers crossed, I've got some stuff to work on that I'm excited about. Now, the last thing that I wanted to discuss before we go back to the big camera was my Dorset fleece, because my goal, my plan has been for the last couple of years to always have a fleece going at the same time as everything else. So the initial fiber that I prepped for my Dorset fleece is done. It's all spun up. So this is from, do I still have it here for you guys to show you? Yes. So I had initially taken these locks and I was lock popping them. And then my plan was to eventually comb them. I just don't have a lot of time to comb at this sort of age and stage in my life. But I was able to get it all carded, and it made beautiful carded bats. And honestly, the spinning was so enjoyable that it's actually kind of made me excited to get the rest of this prepped. So I'll have a total when I'm done. I'm guessing, based on the amount of fiber that was prepped for the first bobbin alone, I'm thinking that I probably will have enough to spin at least 2, if not 3 more full bobbins like that. And then I'll ply them all together and I'll see what I have in the end. My plan is a 3-ply. I want a yarn that's very, very similar. On the intro credits, there's a photo where I am standing and my hand is on my side like this. that was my Gentle Morning, and that was a 3-ply Cheviot that I spun. It was a local Cheviot. I'm really hoping that that yarn that I got from that spin, that's what I'm aiming for. That's what I'm looking for. So I missed a question from Bonnie. She said, when you say prep the fiber, what do you tend to do? So I hope that some of that has helped, but actually we're going to talk about that right now. So this, I'll show you guys next what I've been doing to prep the fiber. I often don't sit down and just spin a braid. I do stuff like this, where I break it up and I strip it down, and that's prepping the fiber for the spin. Prepping the fiber also means prepping a fleece. So lock popping, carding, combing, and so our language gets really confusing. So that's a really good question, Bonnie. So when I'm doing a braid, I do tend to attenuate, whether I put it through a hand card and diz it like the tutorial of Kim's that I posted the link to earlier, or I just do it by hand. So I don't necessarily always diz off the hand card. My Woolly Bully, because I prepped this while we were camping, I actually did this all by hand. So I sat there with the fiber and I had the strips and I just went along them like this and did it manually. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just find if I have my hand card and I have my diz, I just find it's very, very, very even what comes off of the hand card and the diz. And honestly, it's really enjoyable. So I just enjoy it. So the other thing that I have been working on, and let me just go to our other screen and show you guys. It's been a long time since I've worked on this. And where did I put it? Right here. Longway Homestead. So Longway Homestead is Anna Hunter. She runs a farm called Longway Homestead, located in rural Manitoba. And she used to own a yarn shop here in Vancouver, but the cost of living, wanting to get back to the land, wanting to unschool her boys, there was a whole bunch of stuff. They ended up settling in rural Manitoba and buying a massive farm. They run like, I don't even know how many sheep. They run like hundreds and hundreds of sheep. And she does this fiber club, and it's called the Longway Homestead Fiber Club. It only lasts for 12 months. You get 12 installments of fiber. It comes in a roving. They have a pin drafter in their mill. They make yarn as well. Their pin drafter, what you get is pin drafted roving, is what I'm trying to say. And you get 12 different breeds. Most of them are Canadian in terms of where the source was. Some of them do come from like Montana, Wyoming, but I think by and large, most of it is Canadian fleece originally. Bye, Becca, good to see you. And so after the 12, that's it. And it's incredibly affordable. So for those who are in the States, it ends up working out to like $15 US plus a couple of dollars for shipping, because she flat packs everything. So when you get your package, it comes in a vacuum packed sealed container like this in an envelope. So you have to make sure that as soon as you receive it, that you cut it open and allow the fiber to sit in there and breathe. Even if you're not going to spin it right away, get it out of the vacuum pack so that it can just open up, and then store it for when you're ready to spin it. So I got my 12 installments, and I'm actually not sure when I started this, because my Rambouillet I spun a long time ago. Like, I want to say 2020. This photo is from 2020, I'm pretty sure. And then I did 4 more in 2021. Yeah, that's right, 2020, and then I did 4 more in 2021. So I've done my Wensleydale, my Tunis, I've done the Rideau Arcot, which is a Canadian breed. Very, very downy, very medium, higher micron count. Some people wouldn't want this next to their skin. To me, it feels fine. It's a little bit toothier than Columbia. Yeah, so my Tunis, my Wensleydale, my Rideau Arcot, my Finn. Those were the 4 that I did in 2021. And then I haven't worked on it since. And they're all sitting in a bin. I got them right here. And I only have 7 more to do. And it's only 100 grams. So like it's not like I have that much left to do, to be honest. It's not that much. So I pulled out the next one that I had in the queue, and it's Romney. So this is my first bobbin. It's spun. I've done half of the second bobbin. Again, I was sitting here with James. He was working on schoolwork, and I just sat and spun. Because the Romney is so long stapled, this is quite a long stapled Romney. When I pull them out, I think it's something, when I measured it, it was something like 7 or 8 inches was the longest fibers that I could get. So this is the end over here, and this is it here. I've got a ruler. Haha, I have a ruler. And it goes way off the end of the ruler. So we're looking at sort of, 7 inches, 8 inches in places. And so what I did, because this is roving, and I would generally prefer that a long wool was prepped in a combed top style, but because it's already been put into roving and it's been put through the pin drafter, there's no way that we're ever going to be able to find the tips and the butts again and make it into a true worsted yarn, but we can make it worsted-ish. So we can take this woolen prep and we can make it a little bit more worsted and a little bit smoother. So we've been talking a lot today about dizzing off the hand cards, but that's exactly what I've been doing. So I've been taking this and on the hand card, pulling this through. It's really hard to do it when it's not on a hand card, but basically it's anchored on the hand card like in Kim's demo. And you push the diz up, diz off the next bit of fiber. I can't do it just sitting here. It's too cumbersome, but that's what so that's why my diz is sitting on here, because then I can just put the next bit on and keep on going. And I'm almost done. This spin has been extremely, extremely fast, and it's almost done. This is just the last little bit. I think there's about 15 grams here when I weighed it last, and it looks like more than there actually is, because the pin drafted roving is just so light and airy. It's already lovely. And if you don't have a diz and you don't have a hand card and you're just getting started, just do this by hand. You know, again, it doesn't have to be super complicated. You can just do it by hand and just draft through. This has been sitting for several years, so it's just nice to get it opened up again. But I have to admit, the prep off of the hand card has been lovely. That's a really good question, Rebecca. She says, would you comb roving like that? Of course, you'd lose a lot, but would it work? You'd have a lot of waste. There are quite a number of neps in here where the tips have gotten tangled. And some of them I've been leaving in the spinning process, and some of them I've been pulling out. It depends on how bad it is and how big it is. I think you would lose a lot. But I mean, I guess you could. Yeah, you could. There's no reason you can't. I'm just sort of, what would it give you that dizzing it wouldn't give you, I guess is my question. I have to think about that, Rebecca. That's a great question. Yeah. I know there was a couple of other questions. I'll talk about the wraps per inch hat in a few minutes. Christine, thank you for that. I did see it. Eve was wondering if I wanted some Pullworth and Corriedale fleece to play with. I'll talk to you, Eve. This is supposed to be a year of stashing down, but I'll talk to you. Eveline says, I guess I'm going to guess that the key to stripping fiber is something unattainable for us mortals, like patience or something. Rebecca says patience might have something to do with it. You guys are hilarious. It does take time. It does take time to do a really nice job. It's true. It's true. Okay. What else do we have to talk about? We have a lot to talk about, and it's already 11 o'clock. So let's talk about finished objects next, since Christine was asking about the wraps per inch toque. So let's do that next. Okay, finished objects, my wraps per inch toque. So this has been in the process of being tested by lovely, lovely people in our Slack channel. Thank you so much, you guys, for what you have done thus far. This is what I have left of my little skein of yarn. This was Scottish Mist by Ancient Arts Fiber Arts, and they actually don't dye fiber to my knowledge anymore. So this is all I have left, and this is the toque. So I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pop it over I've got my hair in a bun right now because I'm desperate for a haircut. But let me turn to the side and see if I can show this to you guys. Can you guys see that really well? So the biggest issue thus far with the toque has actually been the decreases. So because this is a 1x1 rib, and the other wraps per inch toque that I released a number of years ago, which is going to be re-released on the School of Sweet Georgia, the decreases on that were over quite a bit longer, quite a bit more length, and they kind of swirled a little bit because it was sort of it was just like knit two together, knit two together, knit two together all the way around, and it swirled at the top, and it's actually really pretty. This one, I wanted it to turn more into sort of the toques that are really popular right now, where they almost kind of go, where the decreases are meant to be in the commercial ones that you buy, like Mountain Equipment Co-op, Herschel, a whole bunch of those companies. They're sewn. So the crown is actually sewn on them to make the crown. But of course we're knitters, so we can knit it. So it meant that creating 4 distinct decrease points was what was key. And so it almost kind of makes like a square at the top of the toque, right? So that when you're wearing it, it'll kind of create that sort of look like that's really popular right now. I just don't want to mess up my hair because we're in the middle of the podcast. I'm not trying to be vain. It's annoying to fix. So this starts off with a tubular cast on, and then it's a 1x1 rib for the whole length. And mine is 12 inches long. I wanted to maximize the amount of yarn that I used. I actually wish I had gone a bit further just to use a bit more yarn. And I'm thinking about putting a pom-pom on just to use up the rest of the yarn. Because I wanted a really deep folded 4-inch brim. Just like the ones that are really popular right now that you buy in the store. Because we don't need to buy our toques. We can make our toques. So people have been helping me out by testing for the crown decreases mostly. So the big thing right now that I'm working on, and honestly with the kids being sick and me working, I just haven't had an opportunity. I have to fine tune the decreases for the crown. So they're done every other row. And what I have realized is that because there aren't as many and it goes over a much shorter distance, unless you want kind of peaking at the top of the toque, you have to break the yarn and thread the needle through and close off your crown a little bit sooner than on my wraps per inch toque, where you can kind of push it a little bit further and it doesn't cause that peaking. So that's been the big thing with this toque, is just finishing off those finishing touches. So as I get that fine-tuned over the next week or so, I will post the pattern and get that out into the world. I need to get it photographed. There's a whole bunch of stuff that has to happen. So that is that. And it is done. So if you guys, those of you who are making your toques and are running into problems with the crown decreases because you're test knitting for me, just let me know, and I can give you the new numbers for the crown, because it is a little bit different. So yeah. So Christine was answering Rebecca's question about the roving and combing the roving, and Christine was saying having spun quote unquote true roving, I think you'd lose a huge amount. She spun some North Ronaldsay roving and it was very higgledy-piggledy. I think part of it too, it would depend on the staple length. I don't think you would lose much from this. My question would be just, what are you trying to accomplish? But I think with some of them, like I had one that it was just chock full of naps. If I had combed that, the amount of waste, so instead I had to embrace the naps and just make it seamless, or make it like a tweed yarn. Yeah, indeed, we make our toques. Pauline says, and they are seamless. Yes, the toque is so cute. I love how the stripes came out on the brim. See, I don't love it. I wished, I wanted the whole toque to look more like this. I didn't love all of this really strong striping at the beginning. And if I had known that that was going to happen, I would have started at the ball at the other end. But I think from a distance, it's not quite as noticeable. So yeah, it's cute. One more skein out of my stash. That's the key. Okay, let's talk about works in progress, because that is going to round out the show and probably finish us off. I don't think we're going to get to community participation again. It just gets to be too long. So let's talk about my knitted projects. Okay. Why don't we actually talk about, let's do the one that's not on Diana first. That's not a, it's a little bit easier for me to share with you. I have finished the body of my, I can't believe I've actually finished it, to be honest with you. I'm kind of still in shock. The body of my Winter's Beach cardigan. It's going to be quite big in terms of ease. So as I was knitting this, I was kind of realizing that this was going to actually have a lot of positive ease in it for me. And because of that, I lengthened it to be more the length of one of my favorite really super oversized cardigans that I wear a lot. And so that'll give me the look and feel more of that cardigan. It's a commercial cardigan. The original pattern wanted me to knit only to 13 inches, and I did it to my favorite cardigan 15 inches. So this will be a little bit more ease, a little bit longer, a little bit baggier, a little bit bigger. These threads here, this yarn that's sitting here, this is for the afterthought pockets. And I am now at the point where I'm ready to divide for my front and my back. So I need to knit my fronts, knit my backs, and then there's a 3 needle bind off across the shoulder to finish it off. And then you pick up the sleeves, knit those, do your afterthought pockets, and Bob's your uncle, you're done. So lots and lots of knitting in this. Unfortunately, the yarn, it's sat in my stash for about 10 years. And there's weak points in it. So I've actually already had to go back and fix where the yarn broke in one of the cables. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. This is, let me just tell you about the yarn really quickly. This is Estelle Yarns Eco Tweed DK, and the body of the sweater is being knit on 4.5 millimeter needles, and I did the ribbing at the bottom on 4 millimeter needles. I think what I'm going to have to do when I go to wash and finish this, I'm going to have to wash this I'm going to have to wash this in quite warm water, let it soak, let it absorb all the eucalyptus and stuff, the wool wash, and then I think what I'm going to have to do is spin it in the washing machine so that it's damp dry, or towel dry it, either way. And I often spin most of my sweaters just to get all the excess water out of it. But then I'm gonna have to put it in the dryer. I think I'm gonna put it in the dryer for a little bit. I'll test this on a little swatch first. But it'll strengthen the yarn, it'll full it a little bit, just a little bit. I'll do a time dry like I do when I do my woven fabrics, where I throw it in the dryer for a couple minutes and pull it out, put it back in the dryer, pull it out, because it's gonna fall apart. Like there's places where I know the yarn is like a little bit weak. So that's actually kind of disheartening. That's really too bad. Yeah, it's just kind of sad. But there's ways to strengthen our wool and like create more stability in our fabric. And one of the ways of doing that is to full it slightly. So that's what I'll have to do. You know, it's funny, Christine, you said about doing an extra premiere podcast each month for community participation. I think you might be onto something, because part of the problem, and Rebecca just hit the nose on the head, part of the problem is by the time we get to this stage of the podcast, I've been talking for about an hour and 10 minutes, I'm losing my voice. I don't have a really super, I don't have a lot of stamina when it comes to my voice. And I think it's because of years and years of teaching swimming lessons and lifeguarding and yelling night after night for 4 to 6 hours. And I think it did permanent damage to my vocal cords. Okay, so that is Winter's Beach. I'm not sure, Rebecca, the Disdero that was a little bit oily. No, it's not. That was the mandolin, and that yarn was quite a bit thicker. And yeah, it hadn't been washed after spinning, so I needed to wash it like post-milling. This is actually a commercial yarn that was in my stash for a very long time. Okay, let's talk about the capstone. I just need to find my notes because I don't want to miss anything. So capstone. So this was my marled yarn that I spun up for capstone, and I actually had photos of the three colors of comb top that was the dyed red, yellow, blue that I wanted to show you guys, but I actually didn't put it into OBS for showing it to you guys. So I'll show it to you next time, but that combined with the white made one of the singles. And then the other singles was plied just with an organic Polworth to make this marled yarn. And it's funny, when I showed it to my mom in the skein form, she kind of looked at it and she's like, oh. And I think because it's very desaturated, it's quite pink looking. It looks very gray. It's just kind of a bit, it's a little bit flat. I like it because I know that what the potential is for it, but I could totally see what my mom was saying when she was like, So, I cast this on right away because I didn't want to lose momentum. I also needed at least one project on the needles that was a mindless stockinette, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, because my other two sweaters are both cables. So they're really hard to work on if I have to like pay attention. So I actually took this and worked on it when I was doing some training at work, and it worked really, really well. So let me pull this up so that it's a little bit closer. So this is the Field Day cardigan by Haley Schmedley. She also goes by Ozetta. And yeah, Linda, that's a really good idea. She said you could also felt the sweater a little bit, so wash it in hot and cold water. That's not a bad idea, actually, just felting it. I like using the dryer because it feels a little bit more controlled to me. So when I'm finishing woven fabric, like you can put it into the dryer for a specific amount of time, pull it out, check it, put it back in, pull it out. Whereas with the hot and cold and actually felting, for me, I haven't felt like I've ever had as much control, if that makes sense. I think both are great, but yeah, when it comes to like overall for the whole fabric, I've found the dryer has been a really great option for woven fabric over the years. So with this, it's a drop shoulder. So the idea, let me just turn Diana a little bit further this way. So the drop shoulder comes quite far. It's meant to be worn with like 4 to 10 inches of positive ease. So very typical of a drop shoulder. And a very sort of, I don't know what the word would be, but like, sort of, a casual fit, very relaxed, very casual. My friend Angel knit this, and she used it in, she used beautiful commercial yarn for it. And she was wearing it the other night when we had a knit night on Wednesday night. And, if anybody's local and is looking for a spinning and knitting meetup, check out on Instagram, Knots and Hops. The one that's in the valley is the one that I've been going to, and Angel, Jess, and Megan, who organize it, are wonderful. Jess and my kids go to school together, which has been kind of funny. Anyhow, it's got a V-neck, so you actually increase up here to sort of make the V-neck to have this come down, because the idea is that this actually does meet as you knit down, but I'm not quite there yet where they meet quite yet. I'm like probably 20 rows short of where they actually meet. But what you do, and I think I showed this on the podcast prior, you cast on this piece of the back, and you do short rows back and forth to build up the back fabric, and then you knit straight for a certain distance from your seam sort of down to here. And then you provisionally cast on your button band, and then you work down, and you pick up stitches, and then you work down the front. And then you do the opposite on the back, and you're increasing your V-neck as you go. The nice thing about this, what I really like about patterns like this, is you're doing your button band at the same time. And the reason why I really like that is because I love these vertical. I love these vertical button bands a lot. I think they look really sleek. I think they're really lovely in terms of the finishing. It just has a really nice look to it. And so it's nice to not have to go back and sew that on after. You'll be done. The only seaming that you actually have to do is to seam this to the back neck, which is really nice. So I am onto the body. This is what I got worked on at my training session on my breaks. And I'm about, I don't know, 2 inches, 3 inches down onto the body now. And I am going to lengthen the cardigan just slightly, only because I don't want to have a whole bunch of yarn left over. So what I'm going to do is when I run out of yarn on this, if I'm not sort of where I want to start the ribbing, my third ball, I'm going to knit the sleeves, finish off both sleeves, and then based on the amount of yarn that I have left, I'll finish off the body. So that's kind of my plan. So that is my capstone that was part of the Year of Color stuff that we did last year. And field day. I'm really happy with it. And it's going quickly. I think that's something that I've been really enjoying about this knit, is that it's going really quickly. Whereas I've felt, I don't know if this is real or perceived, but I have felt like Winter's Beach has been a little bit slower. It's just not been quite as fast, if that makes sense. Now I'm trying to figure out which is my front and which is my back, because I marked it and then I think that's my back. Okay, snow crocus. Oh, this sweater. I ran out of yarn, and I had to I need to wind some more yarn, and I just haven't done it yet because I've been working on other things. But I did finish the second sleeve. So last time that we talked, I had the first sleeve done. The second sleeve is now done, and I'm quite a ways down on the body. There's two things that I'll say about this sweater. The first one is this is not for the faint of heart in terms of the number of pages of the pattern. If you can get through the number of pages, it's kind of okay. But if you are a newer knitter and intuitive instruction is not, like, you haven't learned some of that yet, where she's just assuming that you know what's coming next and you know how to do the construction, this maybe wouldn't be the pattern for you. What I do like about it is the fact that the saddle shoulder is really attractive and it's really lovely. What I'm concerned about is that it's going to slowly migrate downward, that there's not enough structure up here to hold the sweater and to hold that structure. Because I wasn't feeling well and I've been fighting this cold, it hasn't really turned into anything, but it's just been annoying. I worked my way down the sleeves, and I finished the second sleeve. I think it was actually this one, if I'm correct. I got to the end of the sweater, or to the end of the sleeve. I'd done all the ribbing. Let me show you guys what happened. Rebecca knows what's coming. Her comment just now, she knows. She knows. Okay, so here, I don't know if we'll get to watch this whole thing because it's quite long. I might have to just be quiet for a few minutes just to rest my voice, but watch where my hands show you. There were two places where I had mistakenly crossed the cable in the wrong direction. So I had basically taken instead of crossing holding the cable needle to the back, in one instance, I'd held it to the front when I needed to hold it to the back, and in the other instance, I'd held it to the back when I needed to hold it to the front. But you can see here, the sleeve itself, the actual knitting of the cable of the needle, it's actually not that long. I think it's only like a 13-inch sleeve, because she has this really long section, if you can see here, of the 1x1 rib that's meant to sort of take up like a fairly decent amount of your forearm. I think it's like 6 or 8 inches or something like that. So I wasn't going to go back and reknit this whole thing, and I wasn't going to go back and reknit the entire sleeve, because knitting cables in the round is actually really annoying. I used the magic loop method, and I put half of the cable on one side of the magic loop and half of the cable on the other side of the magic loop. For those who know magic loop, you'll understand what I'm saying. So James had a huge presentation that was due last week that he had to hand in. So while he was working on that the week before, so it was after the live stream last time, but before the wool circle, I sat one afternoon and I worked on this. So it's funny, that comment about the late afternoon sun, I actually didn't realize that the light was changing so much until I made this sped up. So when I first edited this, I didn't see the light changing, but then when I saw it edited, the light totally changed. I started working on this at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but I actually worked on it sporadically. So it was like, I would work on it for like 10 or 15 minutes, and then the kids would interrupt me, and I'd work on it for another couple minutes, and then kids would interrupt me. So I figure if I had worked on this straight, no stopping, and I had fixed it from the miscross, like undoing all of this, using the pins to keep all the rows straight, fix the cables and knit my way back up. If I had done this all in one fell swoop, I think it would have probably taken me about an hour. I don't think it would have taken me that long, because the actual fixing piece was really fast, like ripping it down, I mean, was really fast. The trick was figuring out which row exactly was the one that was miscrossed. So the one that was the row, like as I ripped back and I got to that spot where I knew that that first cable was miscrossed, finding that exact row was the key. So when you're doing this type of surgery on your knitting and you're really trying to read your knitting, you have to really figure out what the row is that you actually need to fix. Because what could have happened was I could have knit up a few rows here and realized that I had that I hadn't ripped back far enough. So you need to make sure you really pay attention when you get close. Yeah, Diane, it's funny. I normally am so fastidious about checking my cables. Like, I very rarely don't check them. As soon as I finish them, I check them right away. And for whatever reason, I just, you know, missed these two. And I think it's because I was knitting magic loop. It's because I was knitting in the round. It's not because I was not paying attention or whatever. It's because I knew that I was knitting in the round. So somebody had a really maybe use a different color pin when you uncross them. I'm not sure I know what you mean, Diane, when you uncross them. So now it was just a matter in between of knitting the 7 rows that I needed to in between the cable row of just straight knitting. So that was super easy. This is here I'm helping the kids. Then I kept going out, but you can see, I know this is sped up to like a bajillion speed, but it actually was really, like, I'm already to the 2nd cable. It's not that much to fix. The crochet hook worked okay. I find using DPNs, I tend to use shorter DPNs, but I don't have short 4.5 millimeter DPNs. So I had to use longer ones, but I found they, using the DPNs really speeds you up. For me anyways, it really works really quite well. Yeah. Oh, to pin out the row where I'm going to be cabling. Yeah, you know what, Diane, it's so funny. I thought about it and then I was just like, no. I was using so many pins that I just, yeah. But I get what you're saying. And actually I thought, you know, if you had a different type of pin, like if you had one that has the big flower at the top or something, then the cable rows to pin, if you pinned that row with a different type of pin, that would work really well. I did think about that, yeah. So up I go, and every so often I had to redistribute the yarn to make sure that it wasn't too tight or too loose. The one thing about doing this type of sweater surgery is that because you're kind of pulling on your yarn and you're pulling yarn that's already been knit, you do sometimes have to redistribute the tension on those stitches before you keep going. So every so often you need to kind of pull at the fabric and like give it a good tug like that, and just redistribute everything and make sure that everything is kind of evened out a bit better. So I made my way back up, and like I said, I don't think that this actually took me as long as I thought that it would. This was absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the way faster method of fixing it than ripping the whole thing back and re-knitting it. That would have taken days. This took one afternoon of working on it sporadically. I had this pinned out on my table. It's actually the one that's right here under my second camera. I actually had it pinned out right there on my 2 blocking mats, and like I said, I just worked on it steadily throughout the afternoon as the kids' sort of needs accommodated. I think at this point toward the end here, I had rice cooking on the stove, and I just came in here and worked on it while I was waiting for it to boil. And then I came back, like for the water to boil, I went and added the rice, came back, and I had about 21 minutes till the rice was cooked to work on it. And you know, 20 minutes goes like that when you're working on something like this. Linda says, I'm facing a huge fix on the border of a shawl that I easily spent 40 plus hours on. Oh, Linda, I'm so sorry. This is good for me to see. Oh, I'm glad. The idea is to inspire. Like, this stuff is not insurmountable. It is totally fixable. It's not the end of the world, even though when I first found the 2 mistakes, I literally, I cursed a good streak. I was pretty frustrated, but it's also because I wasn't feeling 100%, fighting this cold. There's a theme here this week, you guys. Just feeling a bit run down, needing a bit of a break. We've got a few weeks to go, and then we've got a week away at the end of March, so we're getting there, we're getting there. And you can see that I kept track of my rows by using my stitch counter on my phone, and that really worked really super well. You know, I just kept hitting it every time I finished a row. Oh, I still had to cross it one more time. So where you're looking here. So, oh, this one here. This is a whole other, we'll talk about that. I had to, so this is actually the back of the sweater. I had to fudge these 2 because they weren't matched up. Here, let me go. This is the back. Okay, so what happened was when I brought the front and the backs together, so let me just move her over a little bit. Hang on. Okay, so what happened? Let's look at the back. These are all correct. These are all the same. And they were on a different, I had somehow gained 2 rows on the back here compared to the front. So the front was 2 rows behind, and it was getting really confusing as to which to cross when and when to cross the front and the back. So to make up the 2 rows on the front, I did 2 that were 1 row short, and then this one is the correct distance. So it looks a little bit longer, but I think once the rest of the sweater is knit and once it's being worn and it's moving around, I don't think it'll be noticeable. But I did the same thing on the front here to rip back and to redo all of this, and I still don't really like the way it looks because these are just so obviously shorter. So what I might do is change the, so I might still fix this, just cross this 1 row where it should be crossed, cross this 1 row where it should be crossed, and then obviously this one will be crossed where it should be crossed. If I change the color of this stitch marker, then when I come to this section, I know that it's 2 rows behind, but it's tricky to know kind of what to do because they're being crossed at the front and the back differently. And to be honest with you, it's confusing. So if I had done, so somewhere up in the yoke, I lost 2 rows before I connected them somehow according to the pattern. I'm so sick of this sweater. I'm so sick of it. So yeah, it's so frustrating. Yeah, that would break my head. Totally. It's just annoying, right? And when you know, and when you're a knitter and you know, it's annoying. Like you look at it and you're like, ah, so. Anyhow, I really appreciate you all listening and hearing about all my projects, and I hope that it's inspiring and that you guys learned something, and that when it comes to your spinning, that you're just digging through your stash and finding some fun stuff to spin and stashing down. I would love to hear about it. Post about it in the Slack channel, post about it on the Ravelry group, and we will have a little powwow and look at all the things that everybody's making. It would just be awesome. You're right, Rebecca. Maintaining all those small bits of information would make my brain go. That's why this pattern is a little bit frustrating and not for the faint of heart, because it does have all of these bits and pieces, and the pattern is all divided up into bits and pieces. I think there's probably a way the pattern could have been done a little bit clearer, a little bit more clearly. But there's a lot going on. It's just that type of pattern. And in an effort to try to make it completely seamless, there's all these things that have to happen. So yeah, super interesting. There is a part of me that kind of wants to knit this again, just because it'll be smoother. The other part of me is like, no. So we'll see. Anyhow, I hope you guys have a really wonderful couple of weeks. Next week, streaming, same time, same place, is the Wool Circle. And that will be at 10 a.m. Pacific. Next Tuesday, we'll be talking about true woolen. And then in March, I wanted to really briefly talk about March. We are away the last week in March. We usually take a week at spring break. So usually what I do is I take a week at spring break, which is the end of March, a week at Christmas, the last week of December, and then I usually take a week or two at some point in the summer, whether it's a week in July or a week in August. But because of the stream schedule on Tuesdays, it's making it more and more difficult to do that. So thankfully, April has 5 Tuesdays. So the Wool Circle is going to be pushed forward by 1 week, and won't stream on that 4th Tuesday in March, and we'll stream the 1st Tuesday in April. So April, our stream schedule will be a little bit different. There will be 3 Wool Circles and 2 live streams, just like normal. And March will have 2 live streams and 1 Wool Circle. So we'll just be a little bit different, because I had to accommodate for our week of being away. And the problem is, the week that we're away, I don't even have a way that I could stream the Wool Circle because of where we're going to be. We're going to be mostly off grid. So a much needed break. So just planting that seed. You don't have to remember, but I'm just mentioning it so that you guys have heard it at least a couple of times before it happens. Anyhow, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful week. You're right, Eve. I have no idea where we're going to put the extra community participation. I don't even know how I would get them recorded at this point. We will see. I hope you guys have a great couple of weeks. Yeah, keeping it sustainable. That's right, Eveline. That's the big thing. I hope you guys are making lots of stuff. Please keep sharing everything that you're making and doing. I love seeing it. It's just so inspiring for me as well. Have a great rest of February. I'll see you guys next Tuesday. And until then, happy spinning. Bye, everyone.